Most people missed it, and that might be exactly how it was designed. While everyone was distracted, while timelines kept moving, while headlines came and went like noise, something much quieter and far more calculated was taking shape behind closed doors in Montecito. And once you see it, once you really connect the dots, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a plan that has been unfolding for years.
That Harry's class of people on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, it was when they chose not to speak, not to give interviews, not to fall into the traps which caught her in the park.
I was doing that. And it was shocking. Shocking of Harry to sit there and let his wife attack.
You weren't supposed to notice this. That's the unsettling part, because on the surface, everything looks harmless. A couple trying to rebuild, a family finding peace, two children growing up away from the chaos. That's the image. That's the version being sold. But what if that version is only the cover story? What if beneath that carefully curated calm is something far more strategic, far more intentional, and far more controlled than anyone wants to admit? Tom Bauer didn't just casually stumble into this idea. This is someone who has spent decades peeling back layers others didn't even realize existed. And when someone like that starts pointing out patterns, not moments, not accidents, but patterns, you don't just brush it off. You start asking uncomfortable questions, because what he's been watching isn't messy. It isn't chaotic. It isn't impulsive. It's the opposite. It's structured. It's patient. And it's been building quietly while everyone else was focused on the noise. And that's where it starts to get unsettling. Because the chaos you see publicly, the missteps, the awkward timing, the things that feel off, that might not be the full picture. That might just be the distraction.
Harry and Meghan parading together in Britain. And I think that they don't know.
Look closer, because underneath that noise, something else is moving. Something slower, something deliberate, something that didn't begin yesterday and hasn't stopped since. Think about the dynamic for a second. One person who has spent a lifetime trying to escape the spotlight, another who understands exactly how to step into it, control it, and shape it. That alone should make you pause, because when those two forces collide, you don't get randomness. You get tension. You get strategy. You get something that keeps pulling attention back in again and again, even when it looks like it's falling apart. And here's the part that no one says out loud. There's pressure, real pressure. Not the kind you see in headlines, but the kind that builds quietly when someone feels time slipping away, when opportunities start narrowing, when the ground beneath you doesn't feel as stable as it used to. That kind of pressure doesn't lead to small decisions. It leads to big ones, calculated ones, moves designed to lock something in before it disappears. And those moves, they're starting to show. Because here's what people brushed past like it was nothing. Two children, still young, still years away from even understanding the world they're in. And yet, digital space has already been secured for them. Individual identities mapped out online. Not later, not eventually, already.
Harry and Meghan, or were you just fairly neutral? How did you approach
Well, I'm a
the early
monarchist.
stage?
I believe that the monarchy...
Pause on that. Really pause. Because that's not normal. That's not something you do casually. That's not about protection. That's positioning. That's thinking ahead, not just years, but decades. That's building something before the subjects even realize they're part of it. And then there's the detail that sounds innocent until you sit with it long enough. Emails. Every night. Written. Saved. Preserved. At first glance, it feels emotional, thoughtful, even beautiful. A mother documenting moments for her children. But step back. Look at the bigger picture. Combine it with everything else, the digital groundwork, the image control, the narrative shaping. Suddenly it doesn't look like journaling anymore. It looks like construction, like someone building a record, piece by piece, day by day. A library of moments that could one day be turned into something else entirely. A story already being written long before it's ever told publicly. And that changes everything, because now you're not looking at memories, you're looking at material. And then we hit the contradiction that refuses to stay quiet, the desire for privacy, sitting right next to a fierce grip on titles that tie everything back to the very system they claim to step away from. You can't have both without raising questions. You can't move thousands of miles away, talk about a new life, a different path, and still hold tightly to something that anchors you to the old one. That's not escape. That's leverage. And when you stack it all together, the groundwork, the documentation, the titles, the long-term positioning, it stops looking like a family trying to stay out of the spotlight. It starts looking like something being built, carefully, deliberately, and over time. But to really understand how calculated this might be, you have to go back further. Before the headlines, before the fallout, back to a single moment that didn't didn't seem important at the time. A question asked quietly, almost casually. Do you really know what you're stepping into? And the answer wasn't uncertainty. It wasn't hesitation. It wasn't fear. It was preparation. That's the part that lingers, because preparation changes the entire story. It suggests awareness. It suggests intention. It suggests that what followed wasn't accidental, it was chosen. And once that idea takes hold, everything that comes after starts to look different. Relationships that fade, connections that break, narratives that shift depending on who's telling them. At some point, patterns stop being coincidences. They start becoming signals. Signals that point to something much bigger than what's being shown on the surface. And right now, that bigger picture feels incomplete but not unfinished. It feels like something that's still unfolding, because what comes next, this is where the entire thing starts to feel less like speculation and more like something quietly unraveling in real time. Everything up to this point, the groundwork, the narrative building, the positioning, it all feels controlled, measured, almost surgical. But then suddenly, cracks begin to show, not loudly at first, not in ways that immediately grab attention, just small inconsistencies, small shifts, moments that don't quite land the way they were supposed to. And those moments, they start stacking up. The deals, the announcements, the partnerships that once looked like unstoppable momentum, they begin to feel different, less solid, less certain, like something is being held together, not growing naturally. And when you look closely, that's exactly what it is. Activity without foundation, movement without direction, a constant stream of noise designed to look like progress. Because here's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath it all. Real backing, serious backing, hasn't arrived the way it was expected to. The kind of support that turns an idea into something lasting, it's missing. And without that, everything else becomes performance. The lifestyle brand should have been a turning point, a moment that anchored everything, a clear signal that something real was being built. Instead, it shifted quietly, almost awkwardly. One name replaced by another. No clear explanation, no solid footing. Just another move that left people asking questions instead of feeling convinced. And then came the moment that said more than anyone wanted it to. The jam. 50 jars. That's all it took to create a wave of attention. Headlines, buzz, a sense of demand. It looked like success until you looked closer. Because when half of those jars weren't even sold, when they were simply handed out, the illusion starts to crack. It stops being about a product. It becomes about perception. It's a moment crafted to look like traction, without the substance to support it. That's not growth, that's staging. And the more you see it, the harder it becomes to ignore the pattern. Every launch, every announcement, every carefully timed reveal, it all starts to feel like a search, not for success, but for validation. For someone, anyone, to step in and say, this works, this is worth investing in, but that moment isn't coming. And silence, especially in that world, says everything. Because when real players are interested, they move quickly. They don't hesitate. They don't watch from a distance. And right now, they're watching, not stepping in, not committing, just observing. And that kind of hesitation, it speaks louder than any headline ever could. So the strategy shifts. It has to. And suddenly, things start happening that feel different, less polished, less controlled, like something is being pushed instead of placed. And one of those moments exploded into the open in a way that couldn't be ignored. A meeting, or at least the appearance of one. People connected to both sides. A location that carried weight. And then, just like that, it's everywhere. Photographs, headlines, speculation spreading faster than anyone could contain it. It looked like progress. It looked like movement. It looked like something was finally changing behind the scenes. But look closer, because that kind of story doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's placed deliberately. Someone wanted that image out there. Someone wanted the world to believe that doors were opening again, that conversations were happening, that bridges were being rebuilt. But instead of creating strength, it did the opposite. It exposed something far more revealing: desperation. Because when you have to show something instead of let it speak for itself, it usually means it isn't happening the way you need it to. And the reaction? It wasn't what was expected. Instead of reassurance, it triggered doubt. Instead of control, it highlighted imbalance. One side reaching, the other side not responding. And in that moment, the illusion cracked just a little bit more. Because while all of this is unfolding, the launches, the pivots, the carefully staged moments, something else is happening quietly, steadily, and without the need for attention. A different path is being built, methodical, focused, patient. While one side scrambles to create momentum, the other is creating permanence. And that contrast, it's impossible to ignore once you see it, because one feels reactive and the other feels inevitable. And that's where the pressure intensifies, because deep down, there's an awareness of it, a recognition that time isn't standing still, that windows don't stay open forever, that once something is firmly established elsewhere, there may not be a way back in. And that pressure doesn't stay contained. It spills over into decisions, into strategies, into moves that start feeling bigger, riskier, more urgent. Because now it's not just about building something new, it's about not being left behind. And this is where the narrative, the very foundation everything rests on, starts to matter more than ever. Because at the core of all of this isn't just business, it isn't just branding, it isn't even just image, it's identity. A story that has been told, retold, and reinforced over time, carefully shaped, carefully presented. But then voices from the past begin to surface. Not quietly, not briefly, consistently, repeatedly, offering a version that doesn't quite match what's been put forward. And that creates tension, because when two versions of the same story exist, one polished, one raw, people start to question which one holds more truth. And once that doubt creeps in, it doesn't leave easily. It lingers, it grows, it reshapes how everything else is seen. Because now every move isn't just a move. It's part of a narrative people are actively reevaluating. And that makes everything more fragile than it appears. Because when the foundation of a story is questioned, everything built on top of it becomes unstable. And now we arrive at the part that feels impossible to ignore. The children, not just as individuals, not just as part of a family, but as something being positioned, something being prepared, something being quietly shaped for a future role that hasn't been openly acknowledged, but is becoming harder to deny. Because when you look at everything together, the groundwork, the documentation, the narrative control, it points in one direction. Comparison. Not now, not immediately, but eventually. Two paths, two worlds, two sets of children growing up under completely different circumstances, yet tied together by something that will always connect them. And one day, whether anyone wants it or not, those paths will be placed side by side. And when that happens, the story won't just be told, it will be judged, which leaves everything hanging in a place that feels uncertain, unfinished, and dangerously exposed. Because the next move, it has to work. And if it doesn't, then everything that's been built so far may not hold the way it was supposed to. And that's the part no one can predict. Because whatever comes next isn't just another step. It's the one that decides whether this entire plan was brilliance or something that was always destined to fall apart.